It was Tuesday morning, and in exactly 45 minutes, I was supposed to confirm the final authorization for a $1.8 billion defense contract with NATO, a system I had spent the last 8 years building from scratch. But instead of a handshake with the Pentagon, I got handed my walking papers. I'm Vincent Rodriguez, 47 years old, and I've been designing defense systems longer than most of these corporate types have been out of college. 25 years in the civilian sector after my Navy service, and this morning was supposed to be my crowning achievement. Victoria Hoffman stood at the head of the conference table, her MBA confidence practically radiating off her like heat from asphalt. "We're restructuring for the IPO," she said, not even looking at me directly. "The board feels we need fresh leadership in engineering. Jason will be taking over your role effective immediately." Jason Rivera, 29 years old, sitting there with his startup haircut and that smirk that said he thought he'd just won the lottery. "No hard feelings, Vincent," he said, like we were buddies grabbing beers after work. "We'll make sure your legacy code stays intact." Legacy code. 25 years of expertise reduced to something that needed to be updated. I didn't say much right then. What was the point? I could see Patricia Williams from HR hovering by the door, probably timing this whole thing down to the minute. But here's what none of them knew, and what I wasn't about to tell them. The Guardian system wasn't just software. It was built with something I called the Warrior Protocol, and it recognized loyalty the same way a good Marine recognizes an imposter. Let me back up a bit. The Guardian system came about because of a near miss in the South China Sea about 10 years ago. A destroyer lost its missile defense grid right when Chinese subs started getting aggressive. The crew had to rely on manual targeting while under electronic warfare attack. 3 ships, 900 sailors, all sitting ducks, because some contractor's patch failed at the worst possible moment. That's when NATO called Apex Defense Systems, and Apex called me. They wanted something that couldn't be hacked, couldn't be spoofed, and sure as hell couldn't go down during combat operations. So I built it with biometric locks that didn't just check fingerprints or voice patterns. Guardian learned to recognize decision-making patterns, stress responses, the way career military personnel think under pressure. I spent 18 months basically living in that lab. My wife Sarah was still alive then, fighting cancer but supporting me every step of the way. She used to bring me coffee at 2 a.m. when I was debugging missile trajectory algorithms. "You're not just building a computer system," she'd tell me. "You're protecting someone else's husband from not coming home." Sarah passed away 3 years ago. Our son Michael made captain in the Air Force, flying F-35s now. Captain Rodriguez carrying on the family tradition of keeping Americans safe. That tradition was about to get a whole lot more complicated. When Victoria fired me that Tuesday morning, she had no idea what she was actually doing. See, Guardian wasn't just programmed to recognize authorized users. It was designed to detect breaches of protocol, including the removal of cleared personnel without proper military authorization. The system was smart enough to know that replacing a veteran engineer with someone who'd never passed a NATO security review wasn't an upgrade. It was a red flag. I signed the termination papers without making a scene. Walked out of that building the same way I'd walked off my ship 26 years ago, with my head up and my duty complete. But I knew something they didn't. The real test of Guardian wasn't scheduled until Thursday morning, when NATO would run their final certification exercise before approving the contract. Wednesday night, I was sitting in my garage working on my Harley when my phone buzzed. Text message from an unknown number. "System lockdown initiated. Awaiting command authorization." I knew that message. I'd programmed it myself as a failsafe. Guardian had detected the security breach exactly as designed. When HR processed my termination and removed my clearance from their system, Guardian interpreted it as unauthorized civilian takeover of a military asset. The Warrior Protocol activated automatically. Thursday morning came, and I can only imagine the chaos at Apex. Jason probably walked into the lab expecting to run a simple system check before the NATO observers arrived. Instead, he got a blue screen with one simple message: "Military clearance required. Unauthorized access detected." My phone started ringing around 9 a.m. Victoria's assistant, then Victoria herself, then someone from the Pentagon. I let them all go to voicemail. I was busy having coffee and reading the news, which was starting to pick up the story. Defense contractor faces system failure during NATO review. The beautiful thing about Guardian was that it wasn't just locked, it was actively protecting itself. Any attempt to override the security protocol triggered deeper lockdown procedures. Jason and his team of bright young coders were probably trying everything they could think of, But you can't hack a system that was designed by someone who understood actual combat. By noon, NATO had suspended the exercise. By 2 p.m., the Pentagon had frozen the contract pending investigation. By 5 p.m., Apex stock had dropped 30%, and Victoria's carefully planned IPO was looking like a pipe dream. That's when Colonel Martinez called me directly. Henry Martinez and I went way back, shared a few deployments before he stayed in uniform and I went civilian. "Vince," he said, "what the hell is going on over there? NATO's asking questions I can't answer." "Henry," I said, "looks like someone tried to hand military assets over to uncleared personnel. System did exactly what it was supposed to do." There was a long pause. "The system locked them out?" "System protected itself from unauthorized access." "You know how this works, Henry. You don't hand classified defense systems to people who haven't earned the clearance." Another pause. "Can you unlock it?" "Sure can. Question is, do they deserve to have it unlocked?" Friday morning, I got a call from Victoria herself. She was trying to sound calm, but I could hear the desperation underneath. "Vincent, we need you to come in and resolve this technical issue." Technical issue. Like firing your chief engineer 48 hours before a NATO review was just a minor glitch in the system. "I'm retired, Victoria," I told her. "Effective Tuesday morning, remember? We can discuss bringing you back as a consultant." "At what rate?" The silence stretched long enough that I could almost hear her accountant calculating the cost of her mistake. "We're prepared to be very generous." "How generous?" "Whatever it takes." I let that hang in the air for a while. "Tell you what, Victoria, why don't you have Jason fix it? He's got fresh leadership, right? All that legacy code should be easy enough for someone with his expertise." The call ended pretty quickly after that. Saturday, the Pentagon made it official. Apex Defense Systems was suspended from all federal contracts pending security review. Victoria's IPO was canceled. The investors pulled out faster than sailors hitting shore leave. Monday morning, Colonel Martinez called again. "Vince, we need to talk. In person." I met him at a diner outside the base, the kind of place where you can get eggs over easy and coffee that actually tastes like coffee. Henry looked tired, like he'd been fielding calls from Brussels all weekend. "NATO wants to know if Guardian can be salvaged," he said. "System's fine, Henry. It's the company that's the problem. What would it take to get it operational again?" I thought about Sarah, about Michael flying missions over hostile territory, about all the sailors and soldiers who needed systems they could trust. Pentagon takes direct control, Apex is out completely, and the team that builds the next version understands that this isn't about profit margins. It's about bringing people home alive. Henry nodded. "That can be arranged. What about you? What about me? Pentagon's offering you a position as Senior Defense Systems Advisor. Answer directly to NATO Command. Your own lab, your own team, whatever you need." I sipped my coffee and thought about it. "What's the pay?" Henry smiled for the first time since he'd sat down. "Let's just say it's commensurate with preventing international incidents." The thing is, I'd been thinking about this conversation since Tuesday morning. Not the specifics, but the general shape of it. When you build systems that can shut themselves down, you have to think about what comes after the shutdown. Guardian wasn't just a defense mechanism, it was a reset button for the entire relationship between Apex and the Pentagon. See, Victoria thought she was buying into a tech company that happened to work with the military. She never understood that she was actually buying into a military contractor that happened to use cutting-edge technology. There's a difference, and that difference matters when people's lives are on the line. I'd learned that lesson the hard way back in my Navy days. We had a communications officer who thought he could improve our radio protocols by implementing some civilian encryption software. Looked good on paper, made the data flow faster, reduced overhead. Problem was, when we needed emergency comms during a storm off the Korean coast, the fancy civilian software couldn't handle the interference. We lost contact with 2 other ships for 6 hours. Nobody got hurt that time, but it was a wake-up call. Military systems aren't just about being better or faster or more efficient. They're about being reliable when everything else goes wrong. They're about working when some 19-year-old sailor is scared out of his mind and needs the equipment to do exactly what it's supposed to do. That's what I built into Guardian. Not just the ability to function under stress, but the wisdom to recognize when it was being handled by people who didn't understand what stress really meant. Jason Rivera was a smart kid, probably smarter than me when it came to pure coding ability. But he'd never had to debug a targeting system while incoming missiles were lighting up the radar screen. He'd never had to explain to a commanding officer why the patch he installed last week was causing the defense grid to hiccup during live fire exercises. Victoria Hoffman had an MBA from Wharton and probably knew more about leveraged buyouts than I ever would. But she'd never held a folded flag that used to belong to someone's son. She'd never had to look a widow in the eye and promise that the next system would be better, more reliable, less likely to fail when it mattered most. Guardian knew the difference. That's why I called it the Warrior Protocol. It wasn't about military rank or security clearances, though those mattered. It was about understanding that the work we do has consequences that go beyond quarterly earnings reports. 2 weeks later, I was back in a lab, but this time it was at the Pentagon. Guardian had been transferred under federal control, and Jason Rivera was probably updating his LinkedIn profile to explain why his last job lasted exactly 3 days. Victoria Hoffman made the news again when the SEC opened an investigation into Apex's pre-IPO practices. Turns out firing critical personnel right before major contracts raises red flags with more than just defense systems. The new lab has a different feel to it. Everyone here understands that the work we do matters beyond quarterly earnings reports. My team includes 3 other veterans, 2 guys who served in Afghanistan and a Marine who did 2 tours in Iraq. When we design systems, we think about the people who'll depend on them in the real world. I keep a photo on my desk now. Sarah and me at Michael's commissioning ceremony, all 3 of us in dress uniform. She's smiling that smile she had when she was proud of something. Next to it is Michael's latest squadron photo, taken somewhere over the Pacific that I'm not supposed to talk about. The Guardian system is running again, protecting assets across 3 NATO fleets, but we call it the Rodriguez Protocol now. The Pentagon insisted. I tried to decline, said Guardian was a better name, but sometimes bureaucrats get sentimental about these things. The system still recognizes loyalty, still knows the difference between someone who's earned their clearance and someone who's just along for the ride. But now it's in hands that understand what it was built for. Working directly for the Pentagon is different from working for a defense contractor. At Apex, every decision had to be run through accounting first. How much will this cost? What's the ROI? Can we do it cheaper offshore? Here, the first question is always, will this keep our people safe? It's not that money doesn't matter. The Pentagon tracks every dollar as carefully as any corporation. But the priorities are different. When you're spending taxpayer money to protect American lives, you don't cut corners on reliability to boost profit margins. My new office overlooks the Potomac, and sometimes I watch the planes coming into Reagan National. Commercial flights, mostly business travelers and tourists. People who take it for granted that they can fly from one place to another without worrying about surface-to-air missiles or hostile intercepts. That's what we do, really. We build the invisible shield that lets normal life happen. Most people never think about it, and that's exactly how it should be. Last month, I got a message through official channels. A destroyer captain thanking me for a system that helped his crew track and neutralize 3 hostile missile launches during a freedom of navigation operation. His note was brief, just military professionalism, but at the end he added, "Your system brought my people home. Thank you." That's the thing about building defense systems. It's not about the technology, really. It's about trust. Trust that the people designing them understand what's at stake. Trust that the systems will work when everything else is falling apart. Trust that someone who's never met you is making sure you get home to your family. I called Michael after I got that message. Captain Rodriguez was between training missions, so we had time for a real conversation instead of just the quick check-ins we usually manage. "Dad," he said, "I heard through the grapevine that you're the guy behind the Rodriguez Protocol. That true?" "It's still Guardian to me," I told him. "They just put our name on it." Mom would have been proud. She was proud. She knew what we were building before I did, really. There was a pause, the kind that happens when you're thinking about someone who's not there anymore but should be. "The guys in my squadron," Michael said, "they know your stuff is what's keeping the Navy's missile defense grid running. That's pretty cool, having a dad who's got our backs from the tech side. Just doing my job, son." "Yeah, but you're doing it right. There's a difference." After we hung up, I sat in my office for a while, looking at that photo of Sarah. She always said I worried too much about whether people understood what I was trying to build. "They don't need to understand the technology," she'd tell me. They just need to know it works. She was right about that, like she was right about most things. But she was also wrong about one thing. People do need to understand, not the technology itself, but what it represents. They need to know that somewhere, someone is taking their safety seriously enough to build systems that won't fail when failure means people don't come home. That's what Victoria Hoffman never got. She saw Guardian as a product, something to be optimized and monetized and leveraged for maximum shareholder value. She never understood that it was really a promise, a commitment to the people who depend on it working when nothing else will. The funny thing is, if she'd approached it differently, she probably could have had everything she wanted. The Pentagon loves working with contractors who understand the mission. They pay well for reliability, and they're loyal to companies that deliver when it matters. But Victoria wanted to change the game instead of playing it. She thought she could apply Silicon Valley logic to defense contracting, move fast and break things, disrupt the traditional relationship between military and industry. What she discovered is that some things shouldn't be disrupted. Some relationships are built on trust that takes decades to establish and can be destroyed in a single meeting. Some systems are too important to hand over to people who think good enough is actually good enough. The market taught her that lesson more efficiently than any military tribunal could have. Apex stock never recovered from the Pentagon suspension. The company was eventually sold off in pieces, mostly to competitors who understood how to work with the defense establishment instead of against it. Jason Rivera landed on his feet. Smart guys usually do. He's working for a social media company now, building algorithms that help people find content they might like. Different kind of problem, but probably a better fit for his skills. As for me, I come to work every morning knowing that the systems I build might be the difference between someone's son or daughter making it home alive. Sarah always said that was what I was really building, not code or protocols, but a bridge between the people who serve and the people they're protecting. The new lab has a coffee machine that actually works, and sometimes when I'm debugging code at 2 a.m., I can almost hear Sarah's voice telling me I'm not just building a computer system, I'm making sure someone else's husband or wife or son or daughter gets to come home. That's worth more than any IPO. That's worth more than fresh leadership or legacy code or whatever buzzwords they're using these days. That's the real return on investment, the one that matters when everything else falls away. 3 months into my Pentagon assignment, I got a call that changed everything. Not from a colonel or a general, but from a Navy communications officer I'd never met. "Mr. Rodriguez," he said, "this is Lieutenant Commander Sarah Miller aboard the USS Fitzgerald. We just used your system to intercept and neutralize a coordinated missile attack in the South China Sea. Wanted you to know that your work saved about 300 lives today." I sat there for a moment, phone in my hand, thinking about Sarah and how she always knew this day would come. The day when all those 2 a.m. debugging sessions and weekend lab marathons would translate into real people going home to real families. "Thank you for letting me know, Commander," I said finally. "Sir, there's something else. My father served on a destroyer in the 90s. He always said the best engineers were the ones who understood that every line of code they wrote might be the difference between mission success and catastrophe. I think he would have liked your work." After I hung up, I walked over to the window and looked out at the Potomac again. Somewhere out there, probably at that exact moment, Michael was flying a mission over some piece of ocean that most Americans couldn't find on a map. And because of the system I'd built, because of the lessons I'd learned from being fired and humiliated and written off as legacy code, his aircraft and the ships below him had a better chance of completing their mission safely. That evening, I drove out to Arlington Cemetery. I don't go there often, but sometimes you need to have a conversation with someone who's not around to answer back. Sarah's grave is in a section reserved for military spouses under an oak tree that's probably been there longer than either of us had been alive. I brought her flowers, the yellow ones she always liked, and sat on the bench nearby. "Remember when you said I was building a bridge?" I said to the headstone. "I think you were right. I just didn't understand what kind of bridge it was." The funny thing about grief is how it changes shape over time. Right after Sarah died, it was sharp and immediate, like walking into a wall you didn't see coming. Now it's different, more like the weight of a pack you've learned to carry. Still there, still heavy, but familiar enough that you can function with it. "Michael called last week," I continued. "Said his squadron's been running exercises with the new system. He didn't say much, you know how he is about operational security, but I could hear it in his voice. He feels safer out there. A groundskeeper was working a few rows over, trimming grass around the headstones with the kind of precision that comes from understanding that this is sacred ground. I watched him work for a while, thinking about attention to detail and how it matters in ways people don't always see. The Pentagon wants to expand the Rodriguez Protocol to cover Army and Marine systems too, I told Sarah's headstone. I keep telling them to call it something else, but you know how bureaucrats get when they've made up their minds. The sun was starting to set, painting the cemetery in that golden light that makes everything look more peaceful than it probably is. I stayed until the groundskeeper finished his work and the place was quiet except for the distant sound of planes taking off from Reagan National. Walking back to my car, I thought about Victoria Hoffman and Jason Rivera, about choices and consequences and the way life has of teaching lessons whether you want to learn them or not. Victoria had wanted to build a tech empire, and maybe she still will somewhere else. But she learned that some industries can't be disrupted without breaking things that shouldn't be broken. Trust, for instance, relationships that take decades to build and seconds to destroy. Jason had wanted to prove himself as the next generation of defense engineers, and maybe he'll get that chance somewhere else too. But he learned that expertise isn't just about knowing how to code. It's about understanding why the code needs to work, who depends on it working, and what happens when it doesn't. As for me, I learned something too. I learned that sometimes the best thing that can happen to you is getting fired by people who don't understand what you do. It forces you to remember why you do it in the first place. The drive home took me past Apex's old headquarters. The building was dark except for a few security lights, and there was a for lease sign in the lobby window. Some other company would move in. Eventually, probably another tech firm with another ambitious CEO who thought they could change the world by moving fast and breaking things. Maybe they'd succeed. Maybe they'd figure out how to balance innovation with responsibility, growth with reliability, profit with purpose. But if they didn't, if they made the same mistakes Victoria made, the market would teach them the same lesson it taught her. Systems don't fail, people do. And sometimes, if you build them right, systems remember who they can trust. I pulled into my driveway and sat in the car for a moment, looking at the house Sarah and I had bought when Michael was still in elementary school. The porch light was on, the way she always kept it when she was waiting for me to come home from long days at the lab. Tomorrow, I'd go back to work, back to building systems that would protect people I'd never meet in places I'd never go. And somewhere over the Pacific, Captain Rodriguez would climb into his F-35 knowing that his father's work was helping to keep him safe. That's enough legacy for anyone. In the end, real expertise isn't about what you know. It's about understanding the weight of what you build and who depends on it working when everything else fails. They can fire the engineer, but they can't fire the principles that built the system. And sometimes that's exactly what brings justice.